So let's taste some Highwood whiskeys. I rushed through the last video a little bit, and I forgot to mention a few of the things. One is Highwood makes a White Owl whiskey, which is really interesting. It's a whiskey that's fully aged, so it's a Canadian whiskey, more than 3 years old. That's then filtered through charcoal to remove some flavor and color, and you get something that's a clear whiskey. But is very different than other white spirits you taste. So they do some interesting stuff like that. A lot of bartenders love that. And as well, on in terms of some of the older whiskeys that Highwood produces, Highwood 20-year-old, really great whiskey, worth seeking out. It's really nice. It's pretty affordable. Canadian Rockies 21, Canadian Rockies 17 also worth getting. The Century Reserve whiskeys are also nice. So pretty well anything with an age statement from Highwood is pretty good. So 2 whiskeys today. We have the first one is Centennial Rye Whiskey. It's called rye whiskey even though it is in fact mostly wheat. There's also some rye in there. It's matured in ex-bourbon barrels. This whiskey used to have a 10-year-old age statement. There's a lot of demand, so that's been taken back. But the profile is still quite similar, and it's not young. So if we nose this, so this is quite a on the lighter side of Canadian whiskeys. It's actually a whiskey I keep to do home blending with. I use it as a base whiskey because base whiskeys are hard to find. I find it's just really clean and smooth. But anyway, this is not a base whiskey. It's a finished whiskey. So on the nose you get vanilla, you get a bit of mixed dried fruit, prunes, apricots, peaches. You get a tiny bit of kind of light rye spice as well. And it is largely a wheat whiskey. I do get little, like very light notes of wheat as well in it, but they're on the lighter side. If you taste it, quite light. Starts out sweet, you get some toffee around it, some spice underneath. It's slowly kind of, the tannins play really nicely with the spice, and towards the end of the palate, your mouth just slightly dries out, and you're left with sort of toffee and a bit of sweetness and just a tiny bit of fruit. Really nice, quite a straightforward whiskey, but it's in the style of one of the lighter Canadian blends. It's a nice one. So it's not as kind of rich or complex as some of the other ones we've tasted. But I enjoy it as kind of a simple, light sipper. So, and if I'm ever mixing and I want a Canadian whiskey to give a tiny bit of character, but not too much, like in a whiskey sour, this one does well. So that's Centennial. I wanted to taste an older corn whiskey from Highwood. Now again, Highwood didn't distill these whiskeys, but a lot of them are aged on site and they're produced by Highwood, they do a really good job with them. So this is a 30-year-old single cask. There were 302 bottles. It was an exclusive bottling for BC liquor stores. Around $100, I believe, in 2018. Pretty good for a 30-year-old whiskey. But it's representative a bit of the profile of some of the older Century Reserve whiskeys or the 90-20. So on the nose, just a classic old Canadian corn whiskey. You get kind of these like light waxy notes, like beeswax, blueberry. A lot of people would say green apple. I would go more blueberry. Just the slightest amount of oak as well. And this really just rich complexity to it that's really bright and sometimes hard to define on the palate. It's sweet, kind of beeswax and honey. A little bit of spice, but it's not coming from rye. Yeah, it's just from the oak. Towards the end, you get a really, really nice kind of bit of oak edging in terms of, nice woodiness and a bit of spice. And then the tannins kind of just slowly tighten your mouth for a while in the finish. They're still tightening in my mouth. And then they slowly start to release. And as they release, you get these nice notes of corn, and then almost something that's kind of light and earthy like bean sprouts. So a very nice whiskey. I love this style. I really, really do. I sometimes don't have enough time to really take time with this style. This is one that, for me, you need to take time with. It's not a casual, drinker. It's more one that, for relaxing and a slow evening. But just phenomenal. And the beeswax and the sweetness and the oak and just the hints of corn, they're just brilliant. So that was bottled at 45%. That 30-year-old, pretty similar in character to a lot of the 20-plus-year-old whiskeys that I've had from Highwood. So I guess produced by Highwood. So they're for sure, I think, one of the classic whiskey types to kind of taste if you can get your hand on them and you're exploring Canadian whiskey.